Go. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've been really excited to speak to my guest today. He is Associate Professor Ghows Azzam. He is the Science Advisor to our Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. And I researched this gentleman, his accolades and bio CV is so impressive. It's an honor to talk to you today. Just a note to all my fans and people watching. I know today has been a very funny funny day politically, of course. But today, this conversation is all about the science, the facts, the figures, the evidence, the research behind the vaccines, the virus, and the pandemic. So, first of all, a very good evening, Professor. How are you?
Hi, Jason. Hi. Just call me Gauss, please. Easier.
Okay, sure. Thank you. From a medical background, it's hard to it's hard to address a professor as first name. Tak biasa, tak biasa.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you for having me here, though. It's an honor, to be honest with you.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. So, I understand that you have a presentation of sorts that you want to start with. That'd be great if you want to share your screen now.
Yeah, I do. Let me just share so that you guys have an idea about the plan that we have. Hold on. Share screen. Okay. Okay, can you see it now?
Okay, we can't. The people are not seeing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for some reason. So sorry. Because it's not broadcast. That screen is not broadcasted live. Now, shall we just proceed, sir? Because the it's not being captured live.
If you cannot see the screen, is it?
Yeah, I can see it on Zoom, but now it's blacked out. Okay, hold on. Let me just hold on. Let me recapture this Zoom. 1 minute. That's the problem with technology. 1 minute. Wait.
Okay, I share my screen again. See if you can see this.
Okay, wait. Yeah, we can't see it.
No?
Yeah, we still wait. Hold on. Yeah, we still can't see it. Oh, now we can. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Let's try this. Okay, go.
All right. Full screen, yeah?
Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes, now we
okay,
can.
Great.
Yes.
All right. So just very quickly, I'll tell you the strategy because sometimes people still do confuse, right? And please, Jason, anything, just stop me and ask me questions about the slides. I'm happy to actually clarify certain things. I'll go a bit fast,
Okay.
but you'll see. Very quickly again, I mean, we have 3 phases, and now there's a 4th phase, which is pandemic control. So the first phase is for the frontliners, and then the second phase is the over 60s and the people with comorbid. So basically, these are high-risk groups. And then now you see that we are transitioning from the second phase to the third phase. So this is fasa 1 and fasa 2. That's done. We are now moving from fasa 2 to fasa 3. Okay. So this is a lot of people.
Prof, just to clarify for the viewers and the listeners, this phase is about the vaccination program and not about the MCO phase, correct?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes. Yeah, this is the vaccination phase, not the MCO phase or the exit plan phase.
Okay.
So this is the vaccination phase, right?
Okay.
So we are almost completing phase 2, which is the high risk groups. Although some states are still in phase 2, we are going full force to finish phase 2. So don't worry, if you're phase 2, you'll get your appointments very soon. And phase 3 is starting, and this is where I think majority of your audience are, right? Between 18 to 59.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and of course, we start phase 3 doesn't mean that we stop phase 2. Anyone who comes in phase 2 register will get priority. Automatically will be pushed up the list.
Mm-hmm.
Just some chronology. So we had our first Pfizer arrival on the 21st of February. And it's been quite slow. We know that because we know the shipment of Pfizer because it was only about 1 million doses for the first 2 months. So that's when until the 2nd of April, we only managed to get 500,000 because that is the delivery that we have. But you can see now, I'll show you a graph as well after this. We've reached very quickly from 27 May, 100,000, 8th of June, 150,000, 15th of June, 200,000, and last week, 23rd of June, we've passed 250,000 doses daily. And this has passed our expectation. We were expecting 150,000 per day in June, but we've managed to increase our utilization rate and managed to push up to 250,000 doses per day. Mm-hmm. And this is our portfolio. so just in case people are confused, so we have bought from different manufacturers, and also we've joined COVAX. And our first shipment of AstraZeneca was from COVAX. So we've gotten 800,000 of AstraZeneca from COVAX. We bought, and I think most people know, Pfizer, which is the biggest in our portfolio. That's about 44.8 million doses, which can cover 70% of the population. And then the AstraZeneca, we bought directly 6.4 million, and this will come very soon as well. The first shipment coming from Thailand. Sinovac, I think a lot of people now is getting Sinovac because this is one of the, they are sending in huge amount now, Sinovac, until end of July. So we'll get all 12 million doses of Sinovac by end of July.
Okay.
So that covers about 18%. And then the famous CanSino, which is a single shot vaccine, is going to be very easy to give this to people who are, very far out, the Kampung Orang Asli, Sabah, Sarawak. These are fantastic. And we're still waiting for Sputnik to get approval from NPRA. So these are our portfolio.
Okay.
And very quickly, you see here, this is our vaccination rate. We started around February. We are not doing bad compared to our neighbors. Of course, people always ask Singapore. Singapore is very high. We understand, we know that it's not a big problem. It's good that everyone is vaccination rate is very high. What I want to show you is that our increase over here. So this is when our increase started, right around May. You can see this very sharp increase, and we are on par with Japan, the increase. But this is always what we keep telling people, that it's not that we cannot increase capacity. It's just there's no vaccine delivered to us. And this is, you can see this with Canada, UK, US, Europe, vaccinating most of their population and now going to vaccinating children. They are taking a lot of the vaccines, especially very, very early on. So we get 1 million in 2 months. They get hundreds of million. And this is one thing you saw today, right? Japan is donating vaccines to us, is giving us vaccine. Although they are not that high, they're still sharing their vaccines to everyone else. So, kudos to Japan on this. I'm not hearing anything from the United Kingdom yet. I'm still waiting to see if they're sharing their vaccines to people. US is starting to share as well. We're going to get 1 million doses of Pfizer from them. And this is also just to show you our vaccination rate is going up steadily. We are on par, like I said, almost there with Japan and almost there in Singapore. You can see Thailand, South Korea somehow has dipped, but they've done very well until middle of June, and then suddenly they've slowed down a bit. But I'm just saying here that our increase is quite significant.
Okay.
And this is also the other chart I'm showing you. Somehow around May, when we started to get a lot of vaccines, it's going up.
Okay.
This is our plan, right? This is our plan until December. So you can see, right, when our vaccines are coming up, our administration is also going to go up. So July will be very high, but the peak will be in August.
Okay.
So and then it will go down a bit after September, because in August, states like Selangor, Sarawak, Labuan, Putrajaya, KL, all these big dense states would have been finished.
Okay.
So we've targeted these states to finish by August. That's why you see in September it goes down a bit, right? So and this is our plan to vaccinate, about 80% of the population. And this is the daily throughput. And this is also, you see, it's broken down by states. But let me just show you the national average that we want to do. So you can look at here in July, we're targeting about 389,000 per day. And that's going to go up to 433,000 in August. So we're building up capacity. Capacity is here. We're just waiting for vaccines to come in, and boom, we're going to go much higher. And these are our PPVs. You see, I mean, there's a lot of news on, you see around mega PPVs, but we also have other PPVs as well. We have the KKM PPVs, which has started since phase 1. You have the PPV with the universities. So universities are now coming in, helping us to get people vaccinated. Oh, the famous drive-through, we have that. We have 4 now, going to increase some more. And you can see all the GPs coming in, the private sectors. They are all helping us to get people vaccinated, basically. So the current capacity we have now is 305. We're increasing it in July. But of course, we need the vaccine to match the capacity to reach the optimum level.
Okay.
Right, so this is what I was saying just now. We are looking at Selangor to finish by August, Sarawak to finish by August, KL, Putrajaya, and we're now looking at Labuan to finish by July because we are using Labuan as a pandemic control. So we are sending a lot of vaccines to Labuan because of their spike, and then we try to get them to be the first to reach more than 80% to get vaccinated. So these are the timelines for the whole country. Sorry, yeah. So this is just as usual in a Malaysian presentation. We have some pictures to show you of all the different. So it's not just mega PPVs. Although mega PPVs is basically they are our workhorse. They give you the numbers. But mega PPVs could not cover everyone, like the sick, the elderly, people who's like orang asli, which is quite far from the town. So we have the other like unit vaccinasi bergerak, all the outreach program, everything, the whole lot. So sometimes we have this people don't understand the outreach program is also very, very important, and it's a big part of our vaccination program to get everyone vaccinated. So that's basically it for my presentation. Just a very quick glance of our plan that we want to do. Right?
Okay, so this begs the two questions. The first question I have is, okay, you so in July and August, the it's a peak vaccination period, right? So we are you said up to 380,000, 400,000 a day, right? And then you say that once we finish the big cities, the big states, the dense states, then the output tapers off, the output drops. Now, as a layman looking in, I would be wondering, why not just, or rather, why not try our best to keep up the vaccination rate at 300,000, 400,000 a day for the other states, so that we just try and get as many Malaysians vaccinated as early as possible, rather than tapering off once we are done with the big states?
That's a very good question. So you see, the workhorse are the mega PPVs, but mega PPVs are only efficient in towns, right? In dense areas, Selangor, KL. So if you open mega PPV outside of town area where you don't have enough people to be vaccinated, it's not efficient. And of course, there are also things like we want to get the outreach program, and the outreach program are not as fast. So maybe a team of doctors that goes outreach, right? If they are stationed in a mega PPV where a lot of people coming in, they can do like 20, 30 people in 1 hour. But when you go out on the outreach, for example, you cannot get that numbers. Although you're going to use the same amount of people, but because now you're spreading them out, right? So you're opening. So basically, it's just because you have to spread out your resources.
I see. Understand.
That is one of the reasons why we will try our best, basically with all the resources that we have, to keep the vaccination rate as high as possible. But the dense area are very efficient, and when that stops by August, I think some of the mega PPVs will close. These are doing like WTC 10,000 a day. These are giving us the good numbers. So we'll try our best to continue.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, one of your slides, you mentioned that the PPVs of the private GPs, the private clinics, the numbers I noticed was 661, correct? Aren't there way more private GPs? I remember reading some article, I could be wrong, about 10,000, more than that. Is there a reason why their centers are not involved in the overall PPV scheme?
Yeah, so all the private GPs and the private hospitals, they will go through Protect Health, which is a company under KKM. So they will handle all this. And I know that there were a few thousand that was interested. And they have to go through a couple of process before they are allowed to take the vaccines. Okay, so there are some things that I think because of the limited, like sometimes I think, if I'm not mistaken, before this, KKM has to go and check each clinic. And that seems to be quite a bottleneck. So they are looking at ways to allow it to happen without KKM going to the clinic. So that would increase more and more, because that is quite the bottleneck, right? Asking someone to go and look at the clinics. So I think now they've sort of make it easier, and also the training is done online. We're going to get more and more GPs coming in, definitely. So we are increasing that. We are now promoting it. You can see, I think Protect Health has been doing a lot of promotion to get more and more private clinics to come in and help out with the vaccination program, especially the rural areas, So this will be very useful.
I also, I mean, I know that the vaccination team is trying their best to do as best a job as possible for Malaysians, and I think most of our experiences getting vaccinated are good. I noticed recently that there are some videos and stories of, say, someone who is very elderly being propped up and brought to a PPV, or like I think there was a former former athlete who is bedridden, and then they somehow carried the bed to the PPV. In urban areas, is it not possible for, instead of getting the people, especially like this, the elderly and the bedridden, to the vaccine, is there a way we can bring the vaccine to them?
Yeah, I think there were some cases like that. But we are now reaching out to people saying that actually we can come to you for people who are bedridden like this to vaccinate you in your home. Okay, so we are doing it. Actually, we are doing it a lot.
Okay.
But I mean, like I said, I mean these things are quite slow to happen because when you go to one house, when you vaccinate someone, then you have to wait 30 minutes to make sure
right.
they are okay, right? The 30 minutes observation. So the doctor has to be there.
Yes,
And then only the doctor can go somewhere else. So, I mean, it is available, to be honest with you. It's just that whether people know is another. We are communicating that. So if you have someone who's bedridden, it's hard for them to come to the PPVs. Actually, you can request things like this.
Okay. Regarding vaccinations, of course, there are a lot of there's a lot of noise on social media now about ivermectin. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Ivermectin, and so I just want to ask for my knowledge purposes, what is ivermectin and what is the evidence behind it in whether or not we should use it to fight COVID?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of noise on that. They were saying that India was using it, and some countries are using it. Ivermectin is actually a parasite worm medicine, right?
Okay.
You use it to get rid of this parasitic worm. There were some few randomized control studies that have been done.
Okay.
And these studies showed no significant improvement to people who has COVID. And that is why even the FDA or the EMA, the European Medicine, right, still have not allowed the use of ivermectin for treatment of COVID because there is no significant advantage of using it. But I know that KKM is also conducting a randomized clinical trial. So we'll look at what happened then with the studies. But previous, I think there are some papers, I mean, these are published papers, peer-reviewed papers published, showing that in their randomized control studies, there was no significant improvement. So I don't know why some people are pushing it. I mean, for me, it's always prevention is better than cure.
Yes.
Because ivermectin means that you get COVID first.
Yes.
And then you cure it, right?
Right.
I mean, I'll leave that to the medical expert to look at the data, to run the studies. KKM is running the studies. But so far, it doesn't seem to be helping at all. So, and again, like I said, I'm more to prevention. If you prevent COVID, then you don't even need to cure it.
Right. Yeah, of course, one of the tenets of medicine is prevention is better than cure. So yeah, I was just surprised at all this noise about ivermectin. Okay, another big thing that is happening right now. I just read some articles saying that the Delta variant is very scary. The vaccines may not confer 100% protection. Of course, I know the vaccines will prevent severe symptoms, but I just want to ask, how does this virus mutate, and how do viruses mutate, and how do these variants of COVID-19 emerge? I just want to hear from an expert. How do they actually mutate?
Yeah. Okay. So how do these variants emerge, right? So when you are infected with COVID, what the virus will do is it will replicate inside your body, and it will replicate millions of times.
Okay.
And during that replication, what it needs to do is that, so the COVID is an RNA virus, so it needs to replicate its genetic material. And the replication process is not a foolproof process, meaning you can make mistakes during the genetic replication.
Okay.
So during this replication, sometimes they will make mistakes, and if these mistakes are advantageous to the virus, this is how the variants come out. And if the mutation or basically this mistake is disadvantageous, it will just disappear. So basically, when you're infected with COVID, it will replicate millions of times. So even if the replication error is 1 in a million, so maybe you get one mutation in your body every time you
Yep.
I'm not sure what is the rate of the mutation for COVID. I cannot remember, but that's basically how viruses and bacteria mutate when they infect someone. It's based on the replication error during when they are trying to replicate. So how these variants, that's why they were saying that even though these countries can vaccinate their people 70-80%, you have a majority of the world population unvaccinated, and this virus are just going to keep on replicating, and you're going to see variants popping up here and there, right? So even when this happened, for example, the Delta variant happened, and this one was first detected in India. It was also called the Indian variant. It can actually affect those countries that have been fully vaccinated, like you see what happened in the UK, right? So this is why they say, no one is safe until everyone is safe.
Exactly.
Because you can easily get new variants coming up. If you wait one more year, for example, you can see that over 1 year, there are actually thousands of variants that has emerged. But the variants of concerns are the variant that shows that it can actually be more transmissible. For example, the Delta variant is like 60% more transmissible. So mutations occur all the time, but most of the time it will be disadvantageous for the virus, and the virus will just die. But sometimes this like tiny spark suddenly just happen, boom, it becomes advantageous. This basically survival of the fittest, right? Now you have this mutation that is faster. You can replicate faster in someone's body. Of course, you will outgrow the original Wuhan strain. So that's basically how virus mutates and how it will become more dominant because it transmits faster.
It's scary, but it reminds me of this quote from Jurassic Park. Like life finds a way. Like so the virus will find a way, but I like to think that we will also find a way, and we are finding ways, to defeat this virus. The Mosty minister, Khairy Jamaluddin, recently said that, I think a week ago, he said that we are moving away from using the term herd immunity. And even Singapore recently also quite surprisingly said that they plan to live with the virus. And also Dr. Fauci from the United States has also said that there is no mystical level of herd immunity. So I just want to ask, what is the science behind this rather big paradigm shift? Because I remember in the beginning, it was all about herd immunity. And I was also preaching herd immunity. But now it seems that, no need, or rather, herd immunity is not that important. So what's the science behind this?
So, when we talked about herd immunity, this was, I think, late last year. There was no new variant. We thought the virus is going to stay as it is, because it's already been like almost 1 year and we haven't seen like dangerous variants coming out last year, like almost 1 year. So then suddenly another year came in and then boom, you get a lot of variants coming in. But okay, so herd immunity is basically, it can be calculated based on a formula, which is 1 minus 1 over R0. So that's why you see the R0 that KKM has been pushing out. So you can calculate based on that. When we first calculate herd immunity last year, we got somewhere around 60 to 70% of the population. But then we went up a bit more to try and get 80%. And there is a lot of reasons behind that. It's because the formula is based on 100% efficacy vaccines. And we know there's no 100%, at least for asymptomatic, right? And virus transmission. So when you put in asymptomatic transmission, effectiveness that has gone down, you put in that the virus can still be transmitted when someone is vaccinated, you put in variants in there, then this formula becomes really, really haywire. So that's why we have moved away from these mystical herd immunity numbers. Because when you keep on saying we want to reach herd immunity 80%, people keep on also thinking, you've reached 80%, we are done, we stop everything, you open up the economy. Actually, data is showing that might not happen as perfectly as we want. So we move away from herd immunity. We are going into giving as many people vaccine as possible. And that could mean more than 80% of the population, especially now you see that Pfizer we can give to below 18, above 12. So that's a big number of population, but we're still looking at the data still. So to see, but technically we can actually go more than 80% if we include the student, I mean the below 18, above 12. Okay, so there's a lot of also question about people asking how long does the antibody last? And this is also is important if you want to reach this herd immunity, right? We have data for 1 year already because the clinical trials for Pfizer, Moderna, and all these vaccines started last year. So from 1 year, it seems that the antibody is still there, which is good. But how long will it be there? Could it be 2 years? Could it be 5 years? Is it 10 years? Or is it lifetime? If it's lifetime, it's great. But it could be 2 years, then we need a booster dose. It could be, maybe after one and a half years, 18 months, it could be slowing down. Because there's also the fact that if you got COVID, right, your antibody level goes down after 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Right? So it's actually quite amazing to see vaccines actually the antibody lasts more than 1 year,
Right.
and we hope it goes longer than that, and that would help with a lot. If not, then we start thinking about booster dose, for example, and this is where all this discussion about booster dose comes in, right?
Okay.
To see whether we can increase the antibody, we can prolong the antibody, we can also get more protection from the variant. And also looking at the data from the UK, for example, you can see even though they vaccinated 60 to 70% of the population, now with the Delta variant, their cases are going up back to almost in February. So I think they've gotten past 10,000, now it's like 12,000 or something like that. And the last time they got that amount of number of cases per day is in February. But the biggest difference between now and February in the UK is that they have 60% vaccinated and their death rate. In February, they had about, I think, 500, 600 deaths per day. And now they're only looking at 10, 12, 13 on the same amount of cases. So you can see the death rate has reduced, 50, 60 times. And this is showing the, 90% protection against serious COVID and deaths.
Okay.
So that is the difference. So you might see COVID still being transmitted in the community, but it becomes a flu, for example. You just get some flu, you get some fever, and then it's okay. Because the only worry about COVID is that it can cause death.
Yeah.
That's the biggest worry. So if we can remove that death equation out, then COVID becomes just a normal flu. And that is the best case scenario that we can see now.
It was fascinating that you elaborated on how we arrived at an 80% herd immunity figure, because it sounds to me like a mathematical calculation and prediction of how we can fight and win against this virus. And then you said that because when you factor in variants and mutations and asymptomatic transmissions, you sort of like abandon or rather move the goalpost a little bit. And then when you said that, of course, even with the first dose, deaths drop dramatically. So it's not that we are not necessarily surrendering some ground. We are just changing the way we fight the virus. Am I right? We're not saying, the virus is running away, we can't capture it. It's just we are fighting it differently now.
That's correct. So, I mean, I'm just saying that, we don't want to get too hot up on this herd immunity number. We just want to get maximum people getting vaccinated. More, if we can get more than 80%, I think that's even great, right? But of course, I mean, we learn more and more about the vaccine, of course, but also we learn more and more about the virus, how it behaves, how it mutates. One thing for sure, it does not mutate as fast as influenza.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So like the flu jab, you have to get it every year because that one, it mutates very, very quickly. You can never find a stable virus. But also, I mean, looking at, I was reading some studies, they were looking at the evolution of COVID-19. So I think this is one of the time where we actually monitor the virus's evolution.
In real time,
Wuhan,
right?
In real time,
Yes,
because
yes,
we keep on sequencing their genome all the time, like thousands and thousands of sequence available for researchers to look at. So we are really monitoring how they mutate. It seems that they are stabilizing,
Yes.
which means that they've mutated many times, but they cannot move around anymore. They cannot mutate some more unless they're taking away something else. So the virus looks like it's stabilizing. I don't want to become famous last words. Next tomorrow, you're gonna announce new variant, but
Yes.
it looks like it. And if it's stabilizing, and that is good, because we really don't want it to mutate more and more and more, because the more it mutates, especially in the spike protein, the more it starts to evade the vaccines and everything, right?
Yes. 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 Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
continue to monitor.
I think was it you who tweeted it or someone else? Because I remember reading the article. It was very
Yeah,
fascinating.
I retweeted it from
Yeah.
Eric Topol yeah, in the States.
Right.
He published this paper on it, and I was reading it, and it looks, yeah, it's quite interesting
Okay.
to see this. So we'll see if that hypothesis is correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So you bring up a really good point. I just want to hammer it home for everyone watching and listening. So even with one dose of the vaccine has dramatically dropped the death rates in UK, even with the Delta variant running wild. So that is again why it's so important for us to get vaccinated. Important point. Another issue that's quite contentious on social media is like the guidelines for moving from one phase of the MCO to another is based on how many new cases are reported daily. Okay, but experts have been asking that we need to also know the positivity rate of our testing. I remember WHO guidelines says if you do less than 5% testing, it means you're doing enough testing. I think the numbers for yesterday was like 9% positivity rate. What do you think is the best way to gauge on how we are managing this pandemic, and should KKM release at least the positivity rate of their testing, of all our testing?
I mean, I think it's a general rule of thumb where more tests is better, right?
Yeah.
But I think for what I've seen, the number of cases seems to be, I mean, the percentage seems to be almost similar, and 7 to 8% all the time. So you can actually know how much positive rate you have. But we are looking at the what you call it, the variance to see. I think for me at least, we want to see what are the strains that are actually running around Malaysia, because then we know whether that going to affect our vaccination strategy or not. And of course, the positivity rate of COVID might relate to actually we have some variants, and I think the DG have shown that South African variant, the Beta variant, is actually almost in every state, and we have some Delta variant running around in the country. So hopefully that is not too severe. But you need to correlate the positivity rate and what sort of variants there are here.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, going back to the WHO guideline, yeah, I think more testing is better, and that same goes to like more genomic surveillance is also better, because we need to understand not just the positivity rate, like what sort of virus is spreading around, right? I don't think the Delta variant is very prominent yet in Malaysia, thank God. We are trying to stop it from getting basically transmitted all over the country. That's why we are sending a lot of vaccines to Labuan, because Labuan seems to have the positivity rate in Labuan suddenly was spiking, right?
Yep.
And when they look at the variant, they did genomic sequencing for the people there, and they found like, oh, okay, some of them actually have the Delta variant. So they're starting to lock down Labuan, vaccinate as many people as possible very quickly to stop it from happening. So I mean, like you said, I mean, more testing is better. We get states to help. I mean, like Selangor is doing a lot of testing. I know Penang is doing more testing. I think a lot of states are doing more and more testing, and that is always good.
Yeah.
More testing is good for me.
The even now when I'm watching the comment section and on both Facebook and YouTube. By the way, thanks guys for joining in. There seems to be some confusion between the effectiveness of the vaccines as reported by the manufacturers and the efficacy rate. the actual efficacy rate in the field versus the effectiveness in their trials, right? So can you explain maybe once and for all what's the actual difference? You know, like some people say, oh, it's 95% is better than 80%, but the reality is all vaccines are almost equally effective. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you got the point, like perfectly right. I think the efficacy rate and effectiveness rate you see during when they were doing their clinical trials, they're doing at 20, 30,000 people, they got the efficacy rate and then they publish that and then they try. And then in the real world data, it seems that the efficacy rate goes up and down. I think mostly goes up. Like, you know, AstraZeneca, when it first published, it was 60%, 70%. People were saying, oh, that's a bad vaccine. Pfizer is 90%. Actually, AstraZeneca now shows that it's actually much higher, right? In the UK, when they vaccinated millions of people, it's 90%. Same goes with Sinovac. You can see the difference during clinical trial where they did the clinical trial.
I see.
But I think the point that you want to put forward is, I think now you don't have to worry too much about efficacy rate. It seems in the real world situation, all vaccines work.
Nice.
And you see this in countries that are using Sinovac. You see this in countries that are using AstraZeneca. You see this in countries that are using Pfizer. Yep. Everyone are seeing a reduction in death rate. I think that is the most important thing that people needs to know. And the death rate of the severe COVID, the protection against severe COVID, all countries are reporting more than 90%.
Right.
That is the most important number that people need to know. Whether it's Sinovac, whether it's AstraZeneca, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, Sinopharm, everything. Okay. So I think let's not get too caught up with the efficacy rate and everything, because that one changes depending on the situation. That's good indication in the start, but then now we just look at real world data, and the real world data is showing us that it's all fantastic vaccines. So right. I'm really glad that the real world data actually exceeds the clinical trial data.
Right. So, Prof, when I approached you, of course, I want to talk about the science and everything. I promise that this won't be about politics, okay? But I have to ask, because this is a scientific question. There really is no evidence, is there, that, you know, sanitizing streets and roads will help fight this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I have not seen myself any evidence to show that. Mm-hmm. But of course, sometimes there are a lot of things that people do that is unscientific. I'll take an example. You know, is it? I mean, is it scientific to actually, you know, spend 100 million to pay a football player and a doctor 5,000 pounds? Maybe not. You know, if you spend that 100 million for scientific research, you might have a vaccine before the pandemic happens. But anyway, I mean, that is life. So we try our best to give our scientific sort of advice, but sometimes, you know, things happen. But for me, I think
yes,
I mean, I follow the evidence, and especially I mean, going back to the vaccination plan, we always follow the data. And I think if you look at any of our announcements, every time we announce a new policy, like for example, vaccinating 12 years and above, right? We announce a policy saying that we follow the data, but now there's also another data that's coming in, so we are looking at it again, mixing vaccines. But I cannot really like comment on what other ministries are doing. Okay. But if I'm asked about it, I will tell to look at the data, the scientific data, and we should really look at them.
Yep. Yes, sometimes you know when in the beginning of movies, disaster movies, they don't listen to scientists. It starts there lah.
Well, you know, when the pandemic starts, right? There's always this joke going around saying that, you know, the government is calling the scientists, asking to help create a vaccine, whereas, you know, just actually in the Europe, right before pandemic, they actually cut down the scientific budget.
Yes.
In Europe, the UK. And then suddenly the pandemic happens, and then, oh, sorry, can you help me find a way out of this pandemic?
Yeah.
Even though we just cut your budget quite a lot.
You know, so right now there are one or two conspiracy theorists watching this. They listen to you and they go, aha, so this virus is a conspiracy by the scientists to increase their funding. You see, that's why.
I
Uh,
wish. I don't think we are that cruel to do this, but
exactly. Trust me, most of the scientists I know, they don't have like a lot of money to move the politicians around that much lah. That's what I know. Okay, you mentioned just now that mixing up vaccines, right? For example, your first dose can be Pfizer, second dose AstraZeneca, whatever. What is the current data now, and also what's the mechanism? I'm interested. How can two different vaccines give better results than just using one vaccine? Biologically, molecular, molecular level, how does that happen?
I don't. I guess we need to study in longer detail to see what is the molecular mechanism of why this mixing of vaccines will give you a higher protection. But the data is showing that the antibody rate is high and the safety level is quite high as well. I mean, it looks like it's quite safe, but it's still an ongoing trial.
I see.
That's happening.
Okay.
So we are looking at the data as they publish. I think even like a few days ago, they've come up with new data showing that the antibody level is very high. One of the reasons is because when in each vaccine, for example, the most that they've done is actually Pfizer and AstraZeneca. The sequence of the spike protein might differ a bit. So when you inject two different vaccines, these are two. It's like getting infected with first the Wuhan virus and then the Delta virus. So then it's a bit different. So then your antibody sort of reacts differently, and it
Okay.
thinks that
I
you're
see.
almost similar, but you're not so similar. So I think we look at the. I mean, I don't understand. I don't think we know yet the full mechanism of why it's much higher, but the data is showing that it's much higher.
Right.
So
Right.
usually we look at the data first, and then we try to understand what happened and why it happened.
I see.
So our expert panel, it's led by Dr. Kala and Rasu from KKM, is always looking at this because this is a fascinating combination. I mean, if you look at it right now everyone's talking about, oh, I want the combination of vaccines. Missing vaccines is good. It gives you higher antibodies. But if you remember at one time, right, when Sinovac arrives in Malaysia, there was this news saying that the Chinese CDC is saying that Chinese vaccine needs to be mixed to increase efficacy, and everyone went mad about it,
I
saying that, oh
see.
wait, Chinese vaccine doesn't work. Actually, no, it's actually quite common for people to mix vaccine, and now you see, look, there's this mixing of vaccines, AstraZeneca and Pfizer. I mean, sort of so far the preliminary indication looks good, but we need to look a bit longer because
I see.
sometimes we don't know what's going to happen after maybe 1 month, because usually they have this 60 days period to look at usually in a clinical trial, right? Especially when this COVID-19, they put a minimum of 60 days to be monitored to
Yes.
see
Yes.
if there's
Yes.
anything that's happening, because most severe adverse event comes within the 60 days.
Right.
So I think they're looking at that window as well to see before they can publish any full results. They publish the preliminary result.
I
And usually
see.
preliminary results are, preliminary. It gives you a good indication. But to put it into a national rolling program, we have to study it a bit more. So I think they are looking at every single data that's coming up. And then if it's really good, then we'll consider it. But as long as it's not satisfied enough, I think we follow what basically, again, scientifically, if you get AZAC, and AZAC has been shown to be safe and efficacious already.
Yeah.
That one is already shown to be safe and efficacious. But mixing AZAC and Pfizer, for example, let's wait a bit longer to see whether it's really safe and whether it's really efficacious. And if the data shows that really is safe and efficacious and better than just single vaccine, then we'll use it.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's no harm in doing that if it's better. But we
Right.
just
Right.
have to make sure it's safe.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
very important.
Um, so early on in our discussion, you mentioned that the richer countries are hoarding the vaccines and everything. I just want to ask, like, if you know, how do these rich countries hoard the vaccines? Do they pay like a bigger premium or whatever? Use their political will. And my second question is, how can we prevent this happening down the line when it comes to booster doses? Because once again, when the booster doses are in play, then the whole thing starts again, right? Bidding for vaccines or procuring vaccines. So how can we prevent that? And also, more importantly, how can we hoard it for ourselves?
Okay. So the case about how does these rich countries actually, I mean, because they've signed the deal very early on,
Ah,
much early. So like for example, I think the US announced the warp speed, where they just pour billions and billions of dollars to these companies, and these are companies that are based in the US, in the Europe, right? So US will just pump into the companies that's based in the US. Europe will pump companies that are based in Europe, and of course the UK will pump money to AstraZeneca because they have the money. They can pump billions of dollars into these companies, and basically by pumping this money, they also say that look, so we get priority if it's good,
I
right?
see.
So I mean, sometimes the companies are stuck with that. So they basically just, of course, they put in money forward for them because they have the money to put in forward. Because when one of the first things that when we were discussing with these vaccine companies very early on, they put in like a manufacturing cost. I mean, I cannot remember what is it called, like manufacturing something. So we have to pay a bit to cover their manufacturing capability increase, which we do not want to. So we had to negotiate more and more. But these rich countries can just pour in the money, and they pay more, much higher.
I see.
Like I think when you read in the papers, like Singapore, Israel, they are paying like $30, $30 per dose for Pfizer.
Right.
We're paying much less than what Europe is paying, and
I see.
the Europe leak prices of vaccines, we're paying less than that.
Right. Understand.
So much cheaper. So we have to, when we negotiate, we sign somewhere at the end of the year, because one is that we have to make sure we're getting the best deals.
Okay.
Second is because we don't have the money to actually gamble in vaccines, because if you want to sign much earlier, there was no data at all. There was no data at all. This was really like really investment. Um, so we are trying to get the best price and for the country. So that's why our signing was in October. But it was still quite early. I mean, in terms of Southeast Asia, I think we were one of the first. Maybe Singapore signed first, but we were one of the first to actually sign all these contracts, especially with Pfizer. Like people don't even believe about mRNA technology in that time. It was never made into a vaccines before. People were worried about the minus 80 storage and transport, that then there's this like mRNA can convert your DNA, can change your DNA, and whether it's safe. A lot of people are skeptical about it, but we were one of the first to actually sign
Understand.
it. So because we saw the data was good, and we know about mRNA technology, we discussed about them a lot of times, a few months we discussed with them, get scientific presentation and all. So in terms of how they hoard the vaccines, they pay a lot more
Okay.
upfront. And also, like the US, the operational warp speed, one of the clauses is that they will not export out any vaccine without the approval of the US government.
I
And the
see.
US government did not allow any vaccines to go out until very recently.
I see.
And the same goes to the UK. AstraZeneca that was made in the UK cannot be exported out. Not a single dose can be exported out from the UK. And this is where the tussle comes in with the UK and Europe, right? Because UK, they manufacture AstraZeneca, they keep it to themselves. And then they're taking AstraZeneca from Europe to the UK. And they're also taking it from Serum Institute to the UK. And then they're vaccinating, 70% of their population already. So this time when Europe was saying, wait, we're going to put a halt in export of vaccine. That's because of UK and
I
Europe.
see.
And then of course we people thought we were caught in the middle, because Europe was trying to stop vaccines from going out. But actually Europe, among the countries that are holding vaccines, Europe, at least they allow the export of vaccine.
I see.
Although not much, but they still allow. That's why we get our vaccines from Europe from February. But other countries, no, they don't allow any export. So they can control that. Like even what India is doing now, Serum Institute is the biggest vaccine manufacturer. And when they had the spike in COVID cases, right? And of course, the spike in death, you've seen like a month ago when they're running out of oxygen and everything. What they do now is they stop all export of vaccines from Serum Institute, so that every vaccine that is produced in Serum Institute is used locally. So the countries can do that when the manufacturing plant is in the country. So this is also then goes back to why COVAX is supposed to, help to stop this hoarding of vaccines. But COVAX somehow failed to deliver. I think the last published data, I cannot remember, it was about 88 million doses only that they've actually given out throughout the world. And that's very little for a big organization. I mean, and one of the reasons why they also sort of running out of vaccines is because India stopped exporting from Serum Institute, because they say, wait, my people are dying. So I'm going to give the vaccines to me first before I'm going to give it to anyone else. Because COVAX was hoping that Serum Institute, being the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world, to give a lot of vaccines to COVAX. But when that happened to India and India sort of stopped vaccine output, then COVAX was in trouble. Right, so COVAX had to take some from South Korea and South Europe, but it was not enough to cover what they're supposed to cover. So that's why even our third shipment of COVAX AstraZeneca didn't arrive. We were promised 1.2, almost 1.3 million doses. Only 800,000 came. But thank God, I mean, we are receiving AstraZeneca from Japan, and we're going to get our AstraZeneca from Thailand. So that should cover our AstraZeneca portion a bit. But yeah, COVAX was made to stop this from happening, but it seems that these countries have much more power than COVAX facilities. I mean, even the WHO DG is saying that 75% of all vaccines have been administered in only 10 countries. 75% of vaccines administered in only 10 countries. And then he even termed it as scandalous inequity, right? It's really it really is. If you look at even our, you've seen this Our World in Data, all these charts and everything, right? If you go there now, you can see they're trying to make a point. If you look at the top bit, they will put here 23.4% of the world population has received at least one vaccine, but only 0.9% of low-income people have been vaccinated. That's, and then you get countries in the UK, Canada, I showed you the graph just now, like 70% already, yet the low-income population is only less than 1%. That's how bad the inequality is. We are sort of okay because we can afford to buy vaccines, although not at a premium rate. We can still get the vaccines and pay for it. A bit late, it's okay. We are a few months behind. We started we started in February, only about 2 months after Europe and Singapore and the US starts. But of course, we only get very small amount of vaccines. It's good, we can cover our frontliners. Only now, in June and July, we are getting our big portion of vaccines, and this is when you're going to see how it increase. That's one thing. Booster doses and how do we prevent this from happening? So I think at least from last year, right, the manufacturing process was expanding. I think, if I'm not mistaken, at first Pfizer only can do 1 million doses per year, but I think they've increased that to 3 billion doses a year now. So I think there is much more vaccine to go around, and especially when countries like Europe and US have finished using their vaccines, they have now a lot of vaccines in their storage anyway. So hopefully they can share that. And for booster doses, hopefully we don't have to fight for this anymore. We will have enough vaccine, enough capacity. I think a lot of countries also have started building facilities. Like even we have increased our capacity. We've now done fill and finish for Sinovac and CanSino. And hopefully with that initial period, fill and finish, they can also now increase it to full manufacturing.
Okay, that's good.
Manufacturing from A to Z, that will be great. So I hope Pharma can continue to negotiate with Sinovac and get the full technology transfer to Malaysia, and we can build up. So, I mean, like AstraZeneca also has opened a plant in Thailand. So compared to last year, there's much more manufacturing capacity this year because a lot of the factories are now open. So last year, you do not have this factory of AstraZeneca in Korea, in Japan, in Thailand. So this year, it all started. That's why you see Korea, Thailand, and Japan goes up very quickly. That is when their own factory has started producing vaccine. It was a bit slow because, instead of getting a lot of vaccines in December, they only started to get vaccines somewhere in May, I think, when their factories are up and running. So I think by next year, for booster doses, the capacity has increased a lot more. It depends whether we can sign the deal early or not. We are already thinking about it. I think YBKG has also announced that we are looking at the data to see whether do we really need a booster dose. That is still debatable, right? Whether we need a third dose or not. At the current moment, it looks like we don't, to be honest. Because you look at the UK, Israel, all these countries that have reached 60, 70%, it looks like it's still okay. Maybe a booster dose will, even reduce the case. Right now, you see cases increase, but death rate are very, very low. Maybe a booster dose will also reduce the case. We'll see. I'm sure they're going to start giving the third dose, and then we'll look at it. But the main thing is to prevent death. But I think that's already enough for 2 doses. But we'll see.
Yeah.
So capacity building is something we'll think about.
I think that's one of the fascinating things that you have brought up is that the article saying that scientists are monitoring this evolution of the virus in real time, and from the lay person's point of view, the lay people are also seeing the evolution of drug manufacturing, vaccine manufacturing, vaccine procurement, vaccine injections, the fight against a virus. They are, for the first time, I think, in history, normal people, non-scientists, are also seeing the fight in real time. That's why, all these like new ideas come about, and then sometimes old ideas are dismissed, and then the data sometimes changes the way we think. And this gives rise to vaccine hesitancy. This gives rise to people, see, he said that one day, and then he said this the other day. But what they don't know is science is like that. Science can be messy. Science can be, can at times be contradictory, And so, which leads to my question now, like, I think vaccine hesitancy, in my humble opinion, is one of the biggest generations of our generation. I've tried my best to convince people who are on the fence to vaccinate, but I've never spoken really to a scientist and how a scientist combats vaccine hesitancy. Are there any special tools that you use or you can share with us to help us fight vaccine hesitancy with our other non-scientist people?
Yeah, I think this is a continuous fight all over the world. And I think it comes to a point sometimes that data do not mean anything anymore. You can like shove data to someone's face, and if they don't want the vaccine, they don't want the vaccine. You can say whatever, you can show all the data. So sometimes a bit more different tactics would require to do this. I mean, of course, first of all, to get as much people vaccinated, I mean, you see that, there's also this like FOMO, feeling of missing out when you get like all your friends vaccinated, you want the vaccine now. Like people last time don't even care about getting the vaccines, and then suddenly a lot of their friends are getting the vaccine, especially like, AstraZeneca. Everyone wants to use this chuchuk my ass hashtag. Everyone suddenly wants the vaccine, and suddenly it becomes cool to have chuchuk my ass hashtag in your, So that these are non-scientific ways to do it. It could be like psychological ways to help. So we have to change our tactics depending on the audience. Right, you cannot shove data, cannot shove science to some people because they just sometimes cannot comprehend and just don't want to listen. So conversations help. This type of conversations with you, for example, help to clarify a lot of the things. And we need to do that, especially with people in the rural areas, for example. And this is why we get, if you look, we are doing this with Orang Asli, the head of Orang Asli, the penghulu. We are getting them in, we talk to them, we reach out to them, we explain to them, and we get them vaccinated. And then with that, they go back to their Orang Asli village, and they will then explain to their people, saying that, look, this is safe, I've gotten the vaccine, I've gotten the advice from the doctors, I've gotten the explanation, and then he will then use his understanding, his language to explain to his people so that they will then understand. So we are trying to do that. So you can see now we are vaccinating a lot of penghulus to help them then get. So and then sometimes we get feedback like, they saw the Prime Minister use Pfizer. They want Pfizer. They don't want CanSino. They don't want AstraZeneca because they say the Prime Minister uses Pfizer. But then we have to explain to them, look, the Prime Minister uses Pfizer. That is the first one to arrive. all vaccines are okay. You know, KJ took Sinovac, and then they said, oh, so we have to explain. And then they seem to understand. So of course, and then there are also other things we can that will help. For example, the Hajj, when Saudi Arabia said that you need to get vaccinated to go Hajj, but the only problem is during that time they were saying only AstraZeneca and Pfizer. Then we get people suddenly want to get vaccinated very quickly, but they say I want the one that Saudi Arabia recognized. But I think now Saudi is saying that, you know, we recognize all that's WHO approved. So even Sinovac is okay, because
I see.
I mean, again, if you think about it, Indonesia, Turkey is mostly Sinovac, and these are the biggest Muslim country in
Right,
the world.
right.
Put Saudi Arabia, then stop these two big countries from coming in. I don't think so. So I mean, although Hajj is now cancelled, but we had that conversation
I
before,
see.
right? So these are sometimes non-scientific ways that we can do to help counter vaccine hesitancy, and there are many things that it depends on the. This is really taking context of the community,
Right.
right? So there's no one size fits all.
I
Especially when you start going to Sabah,
yeah, yeah.
Sarawak, you know, you need to start talking their language. So you need to find people who can talk their language to explain to them better about vaccines.
Yeah, your stories remind me of another story that my one of my former lecturers told us. Is she said that they were having difficulty getting mothers in rural areas to to come to the hospital when they are pregnant, or to book their pregnancy, because these mothers in the rural areas, they don't trust doctors, they trust their bomos,
Okay.
their witch doctors. So what she and her team did was they engaged with the bomos, and they sort of made the bomos their partners. So when the women who are pregnant go to the bomos are incentivized to also bring them to the hospital. So that's using the the BOMO outreach program to get people into the
That's
scientific.
great. You know, the
That to me, that's like
Bobo
brilliant.
outreach program.
You know,
I'll
that's
put that forward
yeah.
and see we can
Like,
actually do this.
so which is what, like, now that you talk to me and I remember that story, which brings me to maybe an idea I thought I had early in the pandemic. We gotta get all the the feng shui masters, the
Yes.
sincers, the traditional Chinese doctors, the bomos.
Yeah,
Give them
definitely.
some sort of incentive so that they themselves tell the people you need to get vaccinated. You know what I mean? Or they
You
get
know what we
vaccinated
did
too.
first?
Huh?
We vaccinate the politicians, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
so you know, when you see your politicians get vaccinated and they're still alive and kicking, you know it's safe, right? So you
Yes.
don't have to worry too much about the safety of vaccines now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So just want to remind everyone on Facebook and YouTube, thank you so much for spending a Wednesday night with us. We've got a lot of great
Yeah,
questions
thank you.
coming. So I'm gonna ask Professor Gauss a few more questions, but please get ready to ask your questions. He has very kindly agreed to answer questions from the public. One question I have, I think a few weeks ago or last month, there was this email dump, email leak by, I think, WikiLeaks or something, which implicated or tried to implicate Dr. Fauci in being complicit in this conspiracy theory that the virus resulted from a lab leak in Wuhan. And this is such a salacious, delicious conspiracy theory. Even I myself, I found myself Googling it and researching it, and I was taken in by, like Joe Rogan's podcast discussing these emails and stuff. So, and after that, there are scientists who say that the virus can't possibly be man-made, And now, of course, you don't have to indulge in this conspiracy theory, but what does a scientist such as yourself think about this? What is the data behind whether or not this virus is made in a lab?
Okay, so I think I've tweeted about this, right? About how we are monitoring the virus genome, like we're sequencing every single genome of the virus to get to the letters to see this. And we, so far, after more than 1 year after the Wuhan, the first full virus genome that came out from Wuhan has been published. It's available online. Anyone can go and have a look at it. Even the experts, the bioinformaticians, the evolution biologists, could not say that it's lab made, because if you want to make it in the lab, right, there are certain things that you will leave behind, because this is called like genetic engineering. So when you do genetic engineering, you do leave behind trails of things that you can actually detect again.
I see.
That's one thing. And secondly, they show that, for example, like the spike protein, right, that
Okay.
allows you to that you keep on saying the spike protein will then bind to this ACE2 receptor. The binding is not perfect. If it was man-made, I'm sure the person who wants to make it should have made it even better.
I see.
So it shows that it's not man-made, because someone will not make it to be that imperfect and somehow manage to bind to this receptor. That's why, for example, the Delta variant has a better binding. That's how it's transmissible better.
I see.
So that's why, when you say it's more transmissible, because the spike protein can bind to the receptor better than the previous Wuhan virus. So, I mean, looking at the genome data, people have studied this and studied like millions and millions of sequence. No one can see that it's actually lab made. It's not. It's very hard. I mean, there's very small possibility, like very, very, very small, but I don't think it's lab made, because, and of course, if you look at history, right, you do get this pandemic occurring roughly about every 50 to 100 years. I mean, you have the Spanish flu, you have the Black Plague that happened. I mean, even like recently, as a decade or 20 years ago, we have the Nipah virus in Malaysia.
Yep.
That comes out from bats as well. I mean, it's normal. This is how viruses survive for millions and millions of years. They adapt and adapt and adapt, and we just have to, get ahead of them. Although, viruses are the smallest organism in the world, they are still very, very versatile. So again, going back to that conspiracy theories, I don't believe that it's lab made until, again, data shows me that it is lab made. So far, the data has not shown to be, lab made. But whether people think that is true, I'm not sure why people will, do this. Yeah, I mean,
Because it's
really,
we all want that story, Prof. We want that story that the
yeah.
evil scientists and governments, they are out there trying to make money or control the world from viruses and vaccines.
Illuminati and
Yes,
stuff.
and the vaccines are used to to condition us and brainwash us and control our every movement. I noticed that besides vaccine hesitancy, which sometimes dabbles in a lot of pseudoscience, there's also another branch of, which is an offshoot of vaccine hesitancy, where people somehow think that there are other ways to combat COVID-19 that the doctors are not telling you. Like, oh, they are not telling us, but actually if we do this, it will help us prevent COVID, or it will help us fight against COVID. For example, like let's talk and discussion about vitamin D. And actually, if you use vitamin D, it will fight off COVID much better. So now I didn't read enough to discount it or dismiss it. But what is your take on other methods of fighting COVID, like vitamin D and whatever else?
Yeah, I mean, I also have not spent too much time looking at this. But the biggest question is, why would someone not use it if it's true, right? And it's the same thing when we get a lot of questions on our vaccination program. Like, people keep saying it's slow. But if we have the vaccine, what is the motivation for us to keep the vaccine in the fridge? There's no motivations to that. I mean, we have the vaccines, we give it out. Why would we keep it? People think that when we announce we're going to buy, 50 million vaccines, tomorrow 50 million vaccines is going to arrive in Malaysia, and we just put it in the fridge and keep it and just giving 10,000 a day, which is not true as well. So why would we keep the vaccines in the storage and not giving it to people, not putting it in their arms? Vaccines don't save life. Vaccinations do. Same goes with medicine or all this vitamin D, ivermectin and everything. I mean, if it's real, if it's true, if there's data showing that it will help prevent, I mean, go ahead, let's use this. But as long as there's no concrete data to show this, you might have the opposite effect, where it might be even worse to you without taking this so-called medicine. So for me, I still follow the data. And if there are clinical trials being done, the data has shown in a randomized clinical trial that yes, this compound or these vitamins or this medicine, when you give it to people, it stops them from getting COVID or it helps them to heal faster. Data is there, conclusive. Let's go ahead, let's use it. Like the vaccines, it shows that it prevents COVID infection, it reduces COVID infection, it reduces transmission, it reduces death. Let's use it. Without those data, even I would not believe vaccines, but the data is very, very strong to show that everything that we're doing now is based on science and it works.
Okay. Prof, 1 hour and 10 minutes has just passed, but I feel like time has just flown by talking to you. We'll just take some questions from the comments.
Yes,
once again, thank you so much for agreeing to this. Now, let's just see. Okay, now some of the questions, the information is already out there, of course. But if they ask, I think we try our best to just put out a message again. If someone contracted COVID in between the 2 doses of AstraZeneca, do they still get a second dose as scheduled or 3 months after recovering from COVID?
Oh, that is a very good question. If you get COVID, you have to wait 3 months. But if you have gotten your first dose, let me check back on that and I'll get back to you on this. I think this is more... this is more of a KKM policy.
Yes,
so let me ask my KKM counterpart to see what is the answer, and I'll get back to you on this.
Yes, this is a good point also. I just want to let everyone know that Prof. Ghows is a scientist, of course, and some of the questions that I ask or people ask could be a clinical question, a question that may be better answered by a practicing doctor, so to speak.
That's correct,
or someone from KKM. Okay, so now... someone, Wayne O has asked, I think this is corroborated by news reports, why is WHO delaying the recognition of the Sinovac vaccine? Do you have any comments?
I think it's just when the data is available. Then I don't think they are delaying. I mean, they will evaluate as when the data has arrived to them, right? So Sinovac has to give the data to WHO. And then when I think there are some criterias for WHO submission. So I think Sinovac has to fulfill all these criterias before they can get evaluated by WHO. So I don't think they are delaying. WHO will not be delaying it. It's just that when they receive the vaccine. So I think it just takes a bit more time for Sinovac to prepare everything. The dossier, this is what they call the dossier, to submit to WHO. But I mean, they submitted it to us as well. We approved it faster than WHO. So our experts have seen the data. They look at the data. They're happy with the data, and they think it's good enough to be used. But if they don't fulfill the criteria, then we have to wait for the data to come out.
Okay. Thank you so much. Nick Arfi on YouTube has asked, can we use locally made vaccines as the third / booster doses in the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, locally produced, I mean, we don't have any vaccines that we are making it for ourselves, but we have the Pharmaniaga and the CanSino that's being fill and finish in Malaysia. So, yes, if there is data to show that we require a third dose, so, I mean, like Pharmaniaga is producing Sinovac. So, if the Sinovac third dose is required, we just buy it from Pharmaniaga and use it, which we have been doing now.
I see.
But to mix and match vaccine, we have to wait and see. So, for example, if you say that you've gotten the first 2 doses of Pfizer and AstraZeneca, and the third dose you want to do a Sinovac, then I think for that we have to wait for the mix and match vaccine data to show whether it's safe to do so. Same goes with CanSino. I think they are also doing studies to mix and match CanSino as a booster dose for people who have gotten Sinovac or Sinopharm. I cannot remember. So because the Chinese trials are not as clear as the Western country trials, but I know that they are looking at Sinovac, as CanSino as a booster dose as well.
Okay.
So we'll see at the data, and if the data shows that it's okay, then why not?
Okay. This is a question from Kel. I think it's a pretty good question, although it's about logistics and communications, I suppose. About the Selangor government initiative Selvax, if JKJAV has already bought enough, why does Selangor need to buy 2.5 million doses more? the Selangor MB says target is 80% by October. JKJAV says August. So why the difference, if you can comment?
I don't know why the MB of Selangor. I saw the he just announced just now. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, we presented an accelerated plan for Selangor. We will be giving enough vaccine for Selangor to finish by August. Whether, how, and why they bought the 2.5 million beats me. Yeah, it's very hard for me to answer because we don't know why they do it and why they bought the vaccine and why he announced October. But from our part, we told Selangor, we told the MB, we told the state health department that we're going to give you a lot of vaccines, and please help us to increase vaccination rate because Selangor really needs to ramp up. They have to do 130,000 in July. They have to do, I think, what is it, 150? I have to look back at my slides. 150,000 in August. So let's see, yeah, 130,000 in July and 160,000 in August. So they have to ramp up even with just our vaccine. They can complement their vaccine. I mean, that's up to them. They use their own money to buy it. But on why they do it, I think is something that you have to ask the MB of Selangor. Okay. But we've given enough vaccines to Selangor.
Okay, fair enough. Now, another question from WK. What's your view on Sinovac when there are increasing reports of poor effectiveness against the Delta variant? Are countries using Sinovac vaccine seeing lower death rates against the Delta variant?
Not really though. I mean, I think there was this report. I think it's just usually how the Western media writes about this. Of course, they will not write a good way for Sinovac. But if you read at the details, I think this is something that I tweeted about last time about how they title it for this case in Indonesia. They said that 300 healthcare workers got hospitalized got infected. 300
Yes.
got infected in Indonesia. But when you read the details at the bottom, it says that these 300 people are infected, but I think none of them, or maybe just a very few of them, got hospitalized, and none of them died, which shows that the Sinovac vaccine protects you from the Delta variant, because they were talking about the Delta variant. So sometimes people just read the title, they don't read actually inside. And I think this is sometimes I keep on telling the news agency to, sometimes the title is very important, right? How you put the title, because people sometimes just read the title, they don't read the body of the news. So that article is actually very good. It's just the title is misleading. But that also shows that Sinovac seems to work on the Delta variant. No one, very few of them got hospital. I mean, there's a lot of infection. There was like an outbreak in this area. 300 healthcare workers got infected. Very few got hospitalized, 0 death. I think that's great.
That's great,
because the 300 just recovered after a few days.
Yep. So another question from a question from Stan. I think this, I guess, important for us to address. Hi Prof. What are the chances that our vaccine, that the vaccines we receive is expired or spoiled, knowing that the vaccines need to be stored at certain temperatures? So this is just allaying some fears.
Yeah, I mean, we always monitor when the vaccines are going to expire. I mean, even if you realize when you get jabbed, you look at your MySejahtera, they even tell you when that vaccine is expired. Like sometimes people ask me, like, oh wait, 30 June is my vaccine not working anymore after 30 June? I say, no, that is your batch number.
Yes.
The vaccine that you got, right? The bottle that they took the vaccines from, the expiry date is 30th of June. It's just to tell you that that is your batch of vaccine, and when we give it to you, it has not expired yet. Okay? So we always tell you when the expiry date of the vaccine. You see it in your MySejahtera, you see the batch number. So we will plan to make sure that no vaccine goes above the expiry date.
Okay.
And we always monitor that. And so far, I mean, when they arrive to us, we have about 3 to 6 months to use. And at the rate that we're doing now, the vaccines stay in Malaysia for about a week before it's jabbed. So don't have to worry too much about it. And of course, you can see
Nice.
when your vaccine expires. So don't worry. I
Don't.
think it should be okay. We are
Um,
always open about it.
there's an excellent question here from Ray Ling on Facebook. Have we been evaluating or planning for a safe, sustainable way of reopening schools and childcare centers, given that children would most likely be excluded from the vaccination program, especially those under 12 and possibly 12 to 18, depending on the vaccination guidelines? So, and especially given that the Delta variant, kids are increasingly contracting the virus with non-trivial health outcomes.
Okay, we had the discussion. I can tell you that, but I'm not gonna announce anything because I will let the ministers announce what was the decision on this. But of course, we plan on how to open up the schools again. And I think we'll let the ministers announce this, but don't worry. I think there is a plan, and we're just finalizing it. And then we'll tell you like how we're going to plan to open up the schools slowly. Okay.
Okay, nice. Thanks for that reassurance. Let's see. Okay, and again from WK, I think it's a very interesting question. Do we have any local cases of feared side effects such as blood clots and myocarditis? I believe this is side effects from the vaccines. If not, why not make that public knowledge so that it helps reduce hesitancy?
I think from what I've heard, I think maybe there are some few cases. I cannot remember because when you report, it goes to KKM.
I see.
I don't think there's any that causes death at the moment. So there's no, so far, there is no side effect that causes death. Of course, like anaphylaxis, there is some cases, but of course, that's why you have that 30 minutes period
Observation.
after you get your jab, right? Observation. And then you have this sort of emergency right behind it. Most people don't see that emergency area. But that is basically if you get an anaphylaxis, there's a medical staff and all the equipment's ready there. So far, there is no death from side effect that is causal to the vaccine. Then sometimes people say, oh, someone took the vaccine and passed away. I mean,
Yes.
people even without the vaccine, people do pass away every day. But it's just because we're not vaccinating a lot of people, there will be like coincidence that they've gotten the vaccine, the first jab or the second jab, and then they pass away. It might also mean if you don't get the vaccines, I mean, it might happen as well anyways. But every time that happens, of course, they will investigate. So far, no death causal to the vaccine.
Yeah, correlation is not causation. That's
correct. Yeah, I think you got the terminology right.
It's again one of those things where it's very hard to. It can be hard to combat it. It requires a lot of patience, I guess. Someone there are a few people asking the same question. I'm just gonna condense it into one question. So there are some people saying that the AstraZeneca vaccination dose, the gap into the dose, the gap between the first and second dose should be shortened to 8 weeks instead of the current 12 weeks. And I believe I read a tweet somewhere that the Minister YBKJ is announcing tomorrow, I think, whether or not the interval will be shortened or changed. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, based on the WHO guideline, maximum protection is 12 weeks.
Okay.
But some countries like the UK have shortened it to 8 weeks because you need double dose for the Delta variant.
Okay.
And they did that because they had a surge in Delta variant where 90% of their cases are from the Delta variant. I think this is also what Tan Sri DG tweeted. They say that you need double doses to protect yourself from the Delta variant. So that's why they shortened it from 8 weeks to, from 12 weeks to 8 weeks. We are looking at it in the Malaysian perspective. And yes, YBKG will make an announcement tomorrow. So I think just tune into that.
Nice.
Because some people, I think it's like few more weeks before the 12-week period will come. And a lot of people are a bit more anxious about their appointments. Don't worry. I think, if you're anxious about your appointment, you will get an appointment. We know when your your dose is due. So we will send details closer to when you're supposed to get your second appointment. But I think wait for tomorrow. to see an official announcement about the interval of the second dose.
Okay. I think there's a great question that we can end on. One more question. Let me see, let me just find. Okay, this is I think the perfect way to end this segment. It's from Farah Hassan on YouTube. She's asking, as we are embracing to live with COVID-19 as it becomes endemic, is there any possibility of us getting back to our pre-pandemic lives in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I hope when we vaccinate enough people, 80% of the population or more, that COVID, even though we live with it, will not be a problem to everyone, right? So if you get COVID, you get a fever and that's it, and you can go back to your life. So I hope that that will happen. And I can see that that can happen, to be honest with you. But the key to this is that getting as many people vaccinated as possible. Because once you reach that, and then continue on doing good hygienes, I mean, there are a lot of things that we learn during this pandemic, right? Like washing your hands, blowing candles on a cake. You know how that is quite normal before this, but I'm not sure whether I will want to do that after this anymore. The way you sneeze, you close your mouth when you sneeze. I do this. All of that should be continued after this. So I think when we exit this pandemic, let's bring all these good, at least, things that are good forward, right? The way, your hygiene, how you take care of your hygiene now, it's always a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So let's hope next year we get better. I mean, there are already glimmers of hope that I see on TV, which is Euro 2020, when you see the stadiums are half full or full. That is a nice test case scenario. Let's wait 2 weeks and see if the cases in Europe goes up. If the cases in Europe don't go up, then that's good. If suddenly Europe sees a spike in cases, we know that maybe it's not time yet to open stadiums because they only reach 50-60%. Maybe they need to reach 80% before they can open stadiums. But they have open stadiums, and it's a great thing to see this glimmer of something that we can do or we can look forward to when we reach 80% in a few months.
Nice.
Right? It's not long yet. Please, like I said, bear with us. We're going to get as many Malaysians, as many residents of Malaysians, not just citizens of Malaysia. We're going to vaccinate everyone in Malaysia to make sure that everyone is safe. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the good things about, one of the few good things about vaccine hoarding by the richer countries is that they become our test subjects first. They have that first mover.
They are testing all these cities. But we're going to see in 2 weeks' time how it goes. Because at the moment, I know that Europe is still quite green. So it's not as bad as the UK. UK is red, but I think Europe is green. So we'll see if that color changes. I hope not.
Yep.
Because that will tell you that the vaccines really, really work.
Yep.
Right? So
monitor that. Yeah. So Prof, we've done 1.5 hours, but I could listen to you all day.
Yeah, it's true.
What is your and have a lot of people are tuning in on both Facebook and YouTube. I had a suspicion that people would love to listen to a scientist, and I think I've been proven right. What are your final messages to the people watching?
So my final message is, this is something that everyone should help in, right? Let's get everyone vaccinated. If you have a friend, a family members that are hesitant to get vaccinated, try and convince them, or maybe especially when you yourself have gotten vaccinated. Everyone can do this small bit of help, which is going to escalate. If 1 million people preaches to another million people, just one person preach to one person, 1 million people do it, 2 million people will want to get vaccinated. And then it just goes exponentially. So let's, what I'm saying is that I hope everyone plays a role in this. It's not just government. We've said that from very early on. It's whole of society approach. And of course, if you also see people who are unable to go to the vaccination center, please do help them as well. Either you can help them to bring them to the vaccination center, or you alert the authorities to tell them there's a bedridden person here. Can you help or get your NGOs and everything to help volunteer for the vaccination centers? We're going to open so many vaccination centers now, PPVs. Volunteer in MyVac, you get some pocket money from it as well. So let's together let's win this.
Alright.
Lindung diri, lindung semua.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Associate Professor Ghows Azzam, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. This was very valuable, both for myself and the viewers out there. So once again, just a special thank you to everyone watching. You are the first to know this, but this Friday, 8:30 p.m. I'll be speaking to YB Syed Sadiq. So just tune in. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna ask him a lot of questions, and I hope that you guys can spend your Friday night with us. Anyway, once again, thank you so much to Associate Professor Ghows Azzam, the Science Advisor to MOSTI. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.